Back with you here on the newsfeed PM. Civil society organizations, including Abahlali BaseMjondolo, Equal Education, and the Right2Know Campaign, have joined the first National Dialogue Convention, though with significant reservations. In a joint statement, they describe the dialogue as flawed but necessary, insisting that grassroots voices of the poor and working class must take center stage. They warn, though, against elite capture and empty rhetoric and call instead for urgent, tangible action on hunger, poverty, and accountability. Joining me now is the National Convention Organizing Committee member, Anzio Jacobs. Anzio, good evening. Thank you very much for your time. Having wrapped up day 2 of the National Convention, I'm sure you are hearing the voices of civil society, who, by the way, we are told are the ones who called for this process. Some of them chose not to participate. Others, they say they didn't even receive an invite from you, and asking the question why they would be left out. But ultimately, even at the end of the day today, their feeling is that it seems by design there's something flawed even in the process of the convention in being able to solicit various views from various sectors. What do you say to that criticism?
I say that it's important that South Africans disagree with processes such as the national dialogue. If we are not if we all speak in unison with one another, what will end up happening is that we'll be in an echo chamber. So it's really important that the views that have come out of the national dialogue convention process are divergent. They are reflective of South Africans not sharing the same opinions on everything. And it's important that that was part of the second day process, illustrating that it is possible to have a dialogue despite very difficult circumstances, and even when there are divergent opinions, that South Africans still have something to say, and it's important that those platforms be created.
Yeah. How differently do you imagine that this particular process will eventually emerge in a manner that does not make it, just a collection of various views that, oh, well, we went far and wide. We got a whole lot of sectors involved. They all gave us their input, good and well, and that becomes the only objective. And I don't think that's why we are engaging in this process.
Certainly not. I think that something that was very evident in the responses that were received today was that part of the mapping that we did of the process of the national dialogue included one of rapid response, and this was well received by those that were in the room. A deep necessity for us to keep tabs on the process, to ensure its transparency, to call for clarity in all sectors on how it is that we are expending around this process and how it is that the process is being crafted. Certainly, there is an ambition by those that were in the room to be closer to the crafting process and to be part of ensuring that, especially within localized areas, at a provincial level and at a community level, that the modalities that are used to host discussions look slightly different to each other. And this is again why I say that we welcome the diverging opinions in the room, because that is illustrative of a process that is working for the people. When you've got consensus just across the board, you're less likely to come out with something that is truly reflective of a dialogue. And so in this instance, I do think that that is the first win in the process. I do think that we need to continue to put pressure on all the stakeholders in the process to be transparent, but also to deploy rapid responses so that the ordinary South Africans who are participating can see immediate change as the process unfolds.
Yeah. Now, of course, this is the purview of government per se, so I don't know if you would particularly know how the processes work, but I just wonder if you do have concerns around what some are raising, right, around irregularities as far as finances are concerned. There are some who are saying, well, this is not following, for example, PFMA regulations. Do you have concern that that could possibly taint this process?
I think that it could possibly taint the process, but I can say confidently as an ordinary South African myself, I would not link my name to a process that I wasn't confident was being well conducted. I think that the eminent persons group in particular have also lent their names to this process, and they are well positioned to keep tabs on financial expenditure and due process. Of course, these processes are bound to be imperfect by their very nature. But what I think is that if we continue to put pressure on the process to be one that is transparent, if we continue to call for those that are in charge of the purse of the national dialogue to be in cards with us, that we could have a process that will restore the faith of South Africans.
Yeah. And as far as those then who chose not to be a part, for whatever reason that they chose not to be a part, but could certainly be critical in this process. And then there are those who, for some reason, you've left out, and they are sitting wondering why were we left out. They're not quite sure why they were not brought in. What came out, at least from the 2 days of deliberations, how they can be brought in still into the process?
I think something that was particularly reassuring today was we were going through a process of reviewing the sectors that were in the room. And several people stood to say, my sector is not represented here. And again, this is the importance of having a dialogic process. So raised the fact that they were not in the room. What happened was then a breakout where caucusing could happen. There was a call for those sectors to be identified and to self-champion, and to ensure that names were put forward in order to advance the process, despite the initial list being incomplete. And I think that was widely accepted by people who were in the room. It was a tough process. I myself led it. And I think that the discussions around that process were discussions where they really said, we are not willing to leave the room until we are recognized in the process. And so once recognized, I think there was a reaffirmation that any South African from any walk of life can speak into the process and should be heard. I think this is the general sentiment of the Convention Organising Committee, which I form a part of. And I think it's also echoed in the sentiments of the Eminent Persons Group. But most importantly, perhaps, this is the process that has been laid out by the head of state, and he affirmed it in his address to the convention yesterday.
Right, Anzio, that line, they're unfortunately deteriorating gradually as we are talking, but at least we captured much of what you had to say there. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on. Anzio Jacobs, coordinator of the Civil Society National Dialogue and Convention Organising Committee member. Now,